Hello and welcome to another Visual C# tutorial. Today we're going to continue an earlier discussion we had around text boxes and getting information from users on our form, as well as our most recent video where we discussed string variables. We're going to pull those together into an application and then start talking about number variables in math as well, so that we can start expanding our applications a bit further. This is the application we built earlier around text boxes. I have a label for each one of these boxes, strictly to help the user understand what I'm trying to collect. And I have a text box for each one. And you can see they're named things like first name text box, last name text box, etc. That's what these are. I have my Go button. And then I have this answer label right here, which is where I put the output from the calculations that I'm doing in this form, which really is to stick together first name, last name, and age into a sentence. If I run it, I could enter something like Mary Miller is 15 years old. I click go, and it puts that together for me as a sentence. Now, I might want to make this application a little more complex. So let's start by looking at how it does what it does so far, remind you what happens when I click on this Go button. And you can see that it takes the answer label.text, that's that label at the bottom of the form, and it changes its text property to be all of this stuff to the right. And what that's doing is pulling the first name text box, text property, the last name, and the age, all three of those text boxes. It's pulling the data out and sticking it together with this plus sign, this concatenation sign, and putting in a blank space between the first and last name, adding is between that and the age, and then adding years old at the end. So all I did was create this whole train of strings, stick them all together with plus signs, and voila, I have a sentence. Now, I might want the sentence to be even more complex. I might want to say something like, how much is, and then add the age in again, age text box, can't even fit it on the screen anymore, dot text, and then I'll put in dog years. Now if I go back and run my program, and I type in Mary Miller 16, and I click go, it says Mary Miller is 16 years old. How much is 16 in dog years? So my sentence got a little longer. My code got a little more complex. And right here you could see that I called this age textbox.text more than once. I had to read it from the form twice in order to construct this sentence. And from a computer perspective, that's fairly inefficient. You don't want to do the same thing twice if you can find another way around it. And so this is where we can use the string variables that we discussed in our little role-playing application where we had a backpack that had items in it and we needed to keep track of what we had selected. And we used a string variable in order to do that. So we can do the same concept here. I can create a string variable, just use the word string, and I'll call it, in this case, age, since that's what I want to read. So all that does is define the variable. It's called declaring it. So I'm going to use a variable called age, and I'm going to make it a string variable. This is what I'm going to put in it. So it's a string variable called age. And then after that, I might say age equals age textbox.text. And now I really never have to read age textbox.text again. I can just use this variable age in place of it. So if I go look at my code over here, I can delete all of this and replace it with age, and I can delete all of this and replace it with age. And if we go back out to our application, you'll see that it works exactly the same way as it did before. So there's Mary Miller, 16, I hit go, and I get exactly the same thing I got earlier. Only this time 16 was pulled out of a variable after reading the number from my form only one time. I could carry that forward a little bit more if I wanted to. And it's not necessarily as helpful in this case, but I could actually create multiple string variables. You can do this with commas if you want to, or you can put them on separate lines. But I could create another one called first, and I could create another one called last, and I could pull in all three of those from the form. So I could say first equals first name text box dot text, and last equals last name text box dot text. And now I can replace all of the places that I use those and just put in first and last. So it makes things a little simpler, but most importantly, I only read the age variable once from the form, then I can use it over and over again in my code. And just for consistency, I also did the same thing with first and last.
Now, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that we would start working with numeric variables instead of just string variables. So conveniently, I have this age variable that contains the age of the person who's using this form. And I want to multiply it by 7 in order to get dog years. And I'll post that back on my form. Instead of saying, how much is it in dog years, I'll just tell you. So in order to do that, much like I did with the string variables for age, first, and last, I'm going to create a new integer variable, which I do by saying int and the name of the variable, and I'll call it dog years. Great, now I have a variable where I'm going to put my calculation. So I'll come down here. I've already read the age in, so I'm going to say dog years equals age times 7. And unfortunately, that doesn't work. And that's because age, even though it looks like a number to us, is actually a string. It's like saying, quote, 15, quote. And so I have to figure out some way to convert age, which comes out of a text box as a string every time. I need to convert that into a real number. And the technique for doing that is called parsing. So what I'm going to do here is before I multiply age times 7, I'm going to create another variable. And it's another integer variable, and I'm going to call it age num, which is the numeric version of the age. And I'm going to create it by saying age num equals, since age num is an integer, I'll say int dot, and the technique is called parse. And in parens, I put what it is that I want to parse. I want to parse the age, which is a string. So I want to take this age that I got from the text box and parse it and convert it into an integer and assign that to this new variable I created called agenum. So at this point, I'll have a number in the agenum variable. So here I have to change. I can't use age anymore because age is still a string, but agenum is the numeric version of the string. And you can see that now it allows me to do the calculation because agenum is an int and 7 is an int. So I can multiply those two together. So to recap for the moment, I've got age as a string that I read from a text box, so it's going to be a string. I've got age num, which I've defined as an integer. I want to convert age, the string, into age num, the number, and so this is how I do it. I just say int.parse, and I put age in parentheses. Now I have dog years. Let's go ahead and fix my statement here and say that's dog years in dog years. So now I'm using this dog years variable that I created and assigned age times 7 back here, took the numeric version of age, and I'm just going to output that calculation so we'll see if it actually happened. So let's try again. Let's say James Jones is 20 years old, and I hit go, and it says James Jones is 20. That's 140 in dog years. So we've managed to take this age variable this string from our form, convert it into a number, do math on it, and then output the answer back on my form. And I did that using int.parse. In another video, we'll start from scratch and do an entire application that really is designed to do numbers and math on numbers. And so we'll do from start to finish what it takes to read numbers in from a form, convert them all into integers, and then output a result to tie this all together. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you.